I walked into fire to save lives, only to be burned by his own fiancée and best friend while lying in a hospital bed. My name is Ryan, a 38-year-old firefighter with the Chicago Fire Department. For me, the sound of the siren wasn't chaos. It was a call to action. I was used to running toward danger when everyone else was running away. I had carried children out of smoke-filled rooms, guided the elderly through blazing hallways, and believed my mission was to bring hope out of despair. But no training drill, no fire, could have prepared me for the immolation of trust, a betrayal that came from the very people I would have laid down my life to protect. It was a bitter November night, the kind of Chicago cold that cuts to the bone, banished by a ferocious fire that had erupted in an old warehouse converted into low-income apartments. Strong winds fanned the flames like a ravenous beast. We got a report that a family was still trapped on the third floor. Without hesitation, my team and I charged in. The smoke was thick, black, and seared the lungs. We found the mother and her 2 children, panicked, in a bedroom, but the exit was already engulfed in fire. As I shielded the youngest child, a section of the roof suddenly gave way. There was a deafening crash, followed by an unimaginable, searing pain along my arm and back. Everything went dark. I awoke to a world of sterile white and the steady beeping of machines. The burn unit at Cook County Hospital. My entire left arm and a large part of my back were swathed in thick bandages. I couldn't move. Every breath was a painful effort. The doctors told me I had 3rd and 4th degree burns, that it was a miracle I had survived. They talked about skin grafts, about a physical therapy process that would take years. But in my painkiller-induced haze, I could only think of Chloe, my fiancée, and Mark, my best friend since childhood, and my business partner. They were my reason to fight. In the early days, Chloe was always there. She held my hand, cried, and told me I was her hero. Mark also visited frequently, patting my unburned shoulder and saying, "You just focus on getting better, man. I've got everything at our construction company covered." R&M Construction was our baby, built from scratch, the future that Chloe and I were building together. I felt so lucky to have them. But then, the visits became less frequent. The phone calls grew shorter. Chloe started talking about the medical bills, about an uncertain future. Her voice no longer held loving concern, but a tinge of weary irritation. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the accident, Chloe walked into the room. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Her hands nervously fiddled with her purse. "Ryan, we need to talk," she began, her voice cold. My heart began to beat erratically. "I can't do this anymore," she said, finally looking up, her eyes devoid of emotion. "I can't spend my youth taking care of a cripple. Mark and we've gotten together. He can give me a stable life, a future that you can't anymore." Her every word was a sledgehammer to my chest. My ears were ringing. Mark? My best friend? The brother I trusted unconditionally? "He took care of me when I was at my lowest," Chloe continued, as if to justify herself. "We realized what we truly felt for each other. I'm moving out of our apartment. I'm sorry." She said sorry, but her face held no remorse. She stood up and left, leaving me alone with the sound of my heart monitor beeping frantically. The pain from my burns seemed insignificant compared to the pain tearing me apart inside. I had walked into a fire for strangers, only to be thrown into a far worse hell by the one I loved. I didn't cry, I just lay there, staring at the blank white ceiling, feeling the life inside me grow cold. like a piece of iron pulled from a forge and plunged into ice. The betrayal by Chloe and Mark was only the beginning of the nightmare. When the initial shock subsided, giving way to a numb emptiness, I started to notice other irregularities. I asked a nurse to help me log into my online bank account. I wanted to transfer some money to my personal account to buy a few things. And then I saw it. My joint account with Chloe, which held our entire life savings, over $150,000, the result of years of hard work and plans for a wedding, for a future home, now had a balance of $112. Stunned, I scrolled through the transaction history with a trembling hand. A series of large transfers had been made over the past 2 weeks. All of them were routed to an account named R&M Construction, my company with Mark. But why transfer personal funds into the business account? My gut told me something was terribly wrong. I tried calling Mark. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. "Mark, it's me, Ryan. What the hell is going on with our accounts? Call me back, now." He never called back. A feeling of helplessness and rage washed over me. Strapped to a hospital bed, I could do nothing but stare at the numbers on the screen. It wasn't just the money. It was the sweat, the sleepless nights, the trust I had placed in my best friend and fiancée. They weren't just taking my money, they were erasing my life. Just as I felt I was about to sink to the bottom of despair, someone appeared. Her name was Sarah, a young freelance journalist who wrote investigative pieces for a local Chicago online publication. She had come to the hospital to do a story on the firefighters from the warehouse fire. Sarah had short, chestnut brown hair and intelligent eyes that held an undisguised curiosity. She wasn't like the other reporters who asked cliché questions. She sat down, listened to my story, from the moment I ran into the fire to when I woke up. She noticed the darkness in my eyes, the bitterness in my voice when I mentioned Chloe and Mark. "It sounds like the story doesn't end with the physical scars, does it, Ryan?" she asked gently. There was something about Sarah that felt trustworthy. Maybe it was the sincerity in her eyes, or maybe it was because I had nothing left to lose. I told her everything, about the betrayal, the empty bank account, the deafening silence from Mark. Sarah listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in a small notebook. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said something that changed everything. "This isn't just a love triangle. This is organized fraud, and I think I can help you find the truth." From that day on, Sarah became my ally. She wasn't just a journalist looking for a story. She became my eyes, ears, and legs. She started digging into R&M Construction. She discovered that just a week after I was hospitalized, Mark had used a power of attorney, one I had signed long ago for routine business operations, to execute a series of legal maneuvers. He had re-registered the company, removing my name as co-owner, claiming I had voluntarily withdrawn due to my health condition. Then he began selling off the company's assets, machinery, equipment, even active contracts, at bargain bin prices to another newly formed company. "The new company is called Future Horizons LLC, Sarah told me over the phone, a bombshell of a discovery. "And guess who the registered owner is? Chloe." My heart stopped. They had planned it all, step by step. They had used my tragedy as an opportunity to seize everything I had built. My $150,000 had been laundered through R&M Construction before the company declared bankruptcy and then funneled into Future Horizons LLC as an investment. They thought you would never recover, or if you did, "You'd be too broken to fight," Sarah said, her voice filled with an anger that mirrored my own. They were wrong. That very sentence ignited a different fire within me. Not the destructive fire that had scorched my body, but a fire of determination. I looked at my scarred arm, at the pain that still tormented me every night. They were no longer symbols of loss. They were reminders that I had survived. And if I could survive a collapsing building, I could damn well survive this betrayal. "What do we do?" I asked Sarah, my voice for the first time in weeks holding weight. "We fight," she replied, her tone resolute. "But not with our fists. We fight with the truth." My journey for justice had begun, not in a courtroom, but in a cold hospital room, with an ally I never expected. Physical therapy was a living hell. Every movement, every stretch of a muscle, was an exercise in gritting my teeth against searing pain. The therapist said my recovery depended heavily on my willpower. And now, I had more willpower than ever. The image of Chloe and Mark, their smug smiles as they took everything from me, was the fuel I needed to lift the weights, to take each shaky step, to relearn how to use a left hand that had lost most of its feeling. While I battled physical pain, Sarah fought on another front. She spent weeks following the paper trail. She interviewed former employees of R&M Construction, people Mark had fired for no reason. She spoke with business partners who confirmed that Mark had sold equipment at unusually low prices. The most critical piece of the puzzle came from a young accountant who Mark had dismissed shortly after taking over. The young man had been suspicious of the shady transactions and had secretly backed up the company's entire server to an external hard drive before he left. "This is a gold mine, Ryan," Sarah exclaimed over the phone when she got the hard drive. "It has everything. Emails between Mark and Chloe planning the money transfers, asset sale contracts signed even before the assets were appraised, and a draft business plan for Future Horizons LLC dated a month before your accident." The evidence was overwhelming. This was a calculated conspiracy, not a spontaneous decision made for love, as Chloe had claimed. With this evidence in hand, Sarah wrote a sharp, detailed, multi-part investigative series. She didn't just state the facts, she painted a moving portrait of me, the hero firefighter stabbed in the back by his loved ones while on the brink of death. She gave the article an unforgettable headline: "Fire, Lies, and Betrayal at Firehouse 51." The publication of the first article created a firestorm. My story went viral on social media. Local Chicago news channels picked it up. The Chicago Fire Department issued a press release expressing their absolute support for me. A GoFundMe page was started by the online community to help with my legal fees, and donations surpassed $100,000 in just 48 hours. I wept as I saw thousands of comments from strangers. They called me a hero. They cursed the actions of Mark and Chloe, and they said they would stand with me until the end. The public pressure was immense. Mark and Chloe went from being promising young entrepreneurs to pariahs of the city. Future Horizons LLC was boycotted, and partners canceled contracts. They were forced to hire an expensive law firm to handle the crisis. Their lawyer issued a statement calling Sarah's article a malicious and one-sided smear campaign, insisting that Mark and Chloe's relationship was real and that the business transactions were perfectly legal. "They're trying to drag this out and turn it into a costly legal battle, hoping you'll give up," Sarah analyzed. "They're wrong again," I replied, gripping the handles of my wheelchair. "We hired a brilliant lawyer, a former prosecutor named David Chen, known for his toughness and refusal to back down. With the evidence Sarah had gathered and the financial support from the community, Mr. Chen filed a civil lawsuit and simultaneously handed the entire case file to the Cook County District Attorney's Office, recommending criminal prosecution for fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The first preliminary hearing took place. I was able to walk into the courtroom on my own, albeit with a cane. I wore my fire department dress uniform, the one I thought I'd never have a chance to wear again. My head was held high. When I faced Mark and Chloe across the room, I didn't feel hatred. I felt only pity. They looked haggard and worried. Their smug aura was gone, replaced by fear. They had the money, but they had lost their honor, their friends, and their peace. Their lawyer tried to argue, but against the emails, the bank statements, and the witness testimonies Mr. Chen presented, all their excuses sounded ridiculous. The judge declared there was sufficient evidence to proceed with a full criminal trial. An order was issued to freeze the assets of Future Horizons LLC and the personal accounts of Mark and Chloe. As I walked out of the courthouse, dozens of cameras and microphones were pointed at me. I didn't hide. I looked directly into the lenses and said, "I fought fires to save people. Now, I'm fighting for the truth. I believe in justice, and I thank the community for standing with me." The war wasn't over, but on that day, I knew I had already won. I had gotten my voice back. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, on my way to reclaiming what was mine. The criminal trial lasted for months. In the end, facing incontrovertible evidence and pressure from all sides, Mark and Chloe accepted a plea bargain to avoid longer prison sentences. Mark was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud and embezzlement. Chloe received 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. The civil court also ruled in my favor, ordering them to pay back all the stolen funds, plus damages. The day the verdict was announced, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt an immense sense of relief, as if a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Justice had been served. The darkest chapter of my life could finally be closed. I didn't return to firefighting. The scars and nerve damage in my left arm wouldn't allow it. But instead of wallowing in regret, I found a new path. With the settlement money and the incredible support from the community, I established a nonprofit organization called the Phoenix Foundation. The foundation's mission is to support first responders, police, firefighters, paramedics, who have faced life-altering events, especially those who fall victim to fraud or betrayal during their most vulnerable times. We provide pro bono legal aid, psychological counseling, and emergency financial grants. Sarah, after the success of her articles, decided to leave her publication to become the communications director for my foundation. We had become great friends and an effective team. The foundation's office is in an old brick building we renovated. I discovered a love for woodworking. I built the desks and bookshelves myself. The act of creating something beautiful and useful from raw materials was therapeutic. Every piece of wood I planed, every nail I hammered, felt like a way of reshaping my own life. One day, a young man, a rookie police officer, came to the office. He sat across from me, his eyes empty. He told me he had just been in a car accident while chasing a suspect. And while he was in the hospital, his wife left him, taking all their savings with her. I saw myself in that young man's eyes. I didn't offer him platitudes. I just put a hand on his shoulder and said, "I get it. I've been exactly where you are. It's going to be hard, but you are not alone. And I promise you, it will be okay. We'll get through this together." I don't know where the future will take me. The scars on my back are still there. They will be with me for the rest of my life. But now, when I look in the mirror, I no longer see a victim. I see a survivor, someone who walked out of the fire, both literally and figuratively, stronger and more compassionate. They say fire tests gold, and adversity tests character. I lost my love, my best friend, and the career I cherished. But from the ashes of my old life, I found a new purpose, a greater mission. I learned that even when everything around you burns to the ground, you can find the strength to rebuild, not just for yourself, but for others. My name is Ryan, and this is the story of how I turned the flames of betrayal into a beacon of hope.